Is this a bit of history? It is! Out with a shot, and it's there!
And he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
You can't win anything with kids.
Hello and welcome along to A State of Mind, Sell the Jerseys, the podcast that takes a look at football kits, football culture and everything else in between. From the first strip given to you as a child to the one that you left behind at the goals at five-a-sides 2 years ago, we all have football kits that stand out in our mind. What is it that these pieces of fabric managed to hold over us and why did they excite us so? In this series of podcasts, we will take a closer look at iconic kits, iconic players and iconic moments and asking who wore it well and who was the empty jersey. As well as this, we will be looking at the ways in which the fabric of football shirts are worn into the very fabric of society, where politics are football and often football is politics. My name is Paul Sheridan and we are kicking off episode 1. And joining me today on the podcast is John Paul Jameson of Boys Stuff and much other associations with Celtic and Celtic memorabilia. JP, welcome along to our debut show.
Thank you very much, Paul. Lovely to be here. I've also done many other things. I would have preferred a grander introduction, but I'll take that.
JP, today one of the things that we're going to talk about, their main focus of our subject is going to be the Celtic Centenary kit of 1987, 88, 88, 89 season. I think, close to your heart.
Yeah, it's still one of our best. I think that diamond pattern, we'll talk about that, but we've even got it on the away strip in a much bigger form. It's just iconic. The year's iconic, the season's iconic. It's something that myself, I hark back to in my mind.
And it's definitely true, and one of the things that we will speak about is how iconic the team are, the players and the moments that happened in that season. But we'll go back a wee bit in time, JP, to 1979, where it seems to be a real turning point in the world of football kits, and new technologies and materials are coming through. Hitachi appears, for instance, on Liverpool as their sponsor, and Scotland began to display the names of players on the back of their shirts, just as Electronica appears and flare trousers say goodbye. There is a huge change as well in how football kits are marketed at people. But would you say this would be about the time that football kits become more commonplace?
Yeah, I would say so. I think there was more of a kids market early 70s that had started to kick off, but as I've seen, there's a famous photo of Newcastle fans, some guys, adults in their 30s, on terracing with strips, and I think that really is where it took off, mid to late 70s in terms of replica kits. I'm sure we've all seen pictures in the 60s of some wee granny that's knitted a green and white hoop jumper and, a boy's out the back playing. But it's not the same than getting an official club product that matches what you see your heroes wear.
One of the things I love is the Celtic, the t-shirt the boys wearing in Lisbon, and it just says on it Jock Stein, just written a pen, things like that, just amazing. My dad spoke about when he was wee and he put a jumper on, a green jumper and white, he had a shirt underneath, and from a distance it looked like he might be wearing a Hibs kit, which nobody would have had back in those days. This is a podcast that looks at the ways in which football is such an important part of society, and also if you have ever drawn your new away top with a packet highlighter pens, then this podcast for you. If you've ever lost sleep in a relegation battle in Football Manager or spent evenings in the pub picking your team of the 80s, then stick your earbuds in. And if you've ever asked to have Pierre Van Hooijdonk in the back of your shirt but ended up with Andreas Thom to save cash, then stick your earbuds in and take your place in the stand for A State of Mind, Sell the Jerseys. It's 1987. Hulk Hogan has just slammed Andre the Giant in front of 93,000 fans at the Pontiac Silverdome. The Simpsons have appeared on the Tracy Ullman Show in America, and a young trenchcoat wearing teenager called Rick Astley has debuted in the charts with Never Gonna Give You Up. At the same time, the famous Glasgow Celtic are about to kick off the new season in a new home kit and sporting a brand new badge. This is the story of the Glasgow Celtic Centenary year strip. The close season of 86-87 season ends with the dismissal of Davy Hay and an exodus of star players leaving the club in June and July. Davy Provan retires due to ill health. Danny McGrain left in a free to Hamilton. Murdo MacLeod to Borussia Dortmund. Peter Latchford to Clyde. Celtic also, GP, at this point have essentially sold their strike force.
Yeah, Brian McClare, that was his last game. I think it was at Parkhead 2-1 against Falkirk, scored a penalty. McInally, who went on a great career when you look at it. And of course...
Yes, Morris, who's moved on to Nantes. It really looks like a huge rebuilding job at this point.
I think if we were older now and the way we analyse it, and you go into such an important season, to have lost what we lost, the experience of McGrain. I know we played a year with Hamilton, then that was it. McLeod, who had a great career in Germany, still had plenty of years in him, scored against us in UEFA Cup that season. And obviously, no matter what you think of our front line, I think who we left with Mark McGee.
Sleepless nights, I think, would ensue.
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah.
The club into May and June arrived Billy Stark from Aberdeen, defender Chris Morris, Andy Walker comes from Motherwell, and of course at the helm was Billy McNeil, who is looking to rebuild and emulate the success of his first career in charge. Later on, Stephen Murray arrives from Nottingham Forest. Charlie Christie, the father of current player Ryan Christie, comes from Inverness Thistle. And November sees the arrival of Frank McAvenny for a club record fee of $750,000. And finally, Super Joe Miller of Aberdeen. But one of the things that's vital in the success of this, JP, is also the arrival of Mick McCarthy, who was signed by Hay just before he leaves.
Do you know, I didn't know that. I thought that would have been a Billy McNeil link from when he was Man City boss.
They had worked together as well.
Yeah,
prior to that.
I didn't know that. I thought that was a McNeil signing.
I know that at this point, McNeil obviously wants everything to hit the ground running. We said we have to hit the ground running as they enter into the 100th anniversary, the 100 years as a club in 87. And for this strip of this season is Celtic release a brand new strip with a brand new badge. And whenever you see this kit, JP, the Centenary year strip, what does it bring up to you?
Sunshine. I'm thinking Scottish Cup finals. It brings up, I mean, my first Old Firm game was Billy Stark, the 1-0 game in 87. And from memory, Billy Stark was slated. He was old. In those days, 32. 32 is nothing now. And there he was, I think, late August. And it brings up who I think the greatest Celt ever, Roy Aitken. Just memories of winning, of tough men, of guys who could do a job, a team where Celtic meant something to every one of them rather than their job. I mean, that strip to me is Christmas as well. It's getting that strip, and my strip came in boxes, Paul, Umbro boxes. And I got all 3 kits, including the European one, and the goalkeeping, that's 4. To me, it's just, it's a time where, it's a happy place. It's a happy place.
Certainly there's an association of success with that strip. That obviously Celtic go through the 87-88 campaign, win the League and Cup double the year after, 89. They're not successful in the league, but they win the Scottish Cup. We'll have a wee look at the strip just now, and we'll take a wee look at the kind of design of it all together. It's an Umbro snap button-up round neck, I think is the technical term for it, which was used on a few kits that season, such as Aberdeen's home kit and Chelsea's away strip. At this point, there's a kind of change in
England
football
kit
strips.
too.
England kit as well, yeah. But at this point, there's a kind of change in the way football strips are manufactured in terms of technologies that are coming through. And obviously, this is an Umbro one. It's quite traditional, it's Umbro style. We'll see across in Adidas in Germany are beginning to push out the boat with the faded chevron designs that will come in the European Championships. But this is the Umbro kit is very much it's really an iconic strip, but it's also an iconic checkered pattern that's part of the top, this kind of checkerboard idea that's going through the top. It's quite safe though in some ways. Umbro aren't going too mental. They're very traditionalist with their style, but it's a real classy strip for that era, and it's different. It's the weight's a wee bit heavy. It's a bit baggier.
It was stretchable though. That's something I can certainly remember, because I certainly did the hemline in a few times in terms of pulling out the
Rough tackles down the
stitching.
park.
Absolutely, but you say it's safe, but it's something that we all hark back to when we want a kit and we moan about it. We say the Lisbon Lions, then Centenary.
It's iconic. It's up in that
The
echelon
echelons
of the top
yeah.
plate strips, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
On it, there's 6 green hoops there, and 5 white ones. I know it's a bit of a boring there, but it's just 5 hoops and 6 green white. Is that really as important? Do we see when we dissect a Celtic top? Are we really looking at it? I'm thinking maybe over-analysing it for this podcast, whereas when you would just look at it as a thing of beauty.
I look at it, to me it's art.
Yes.
To me that is something I want to wear. It's fashion, it's art, it's iconic. It's what, when you meet a foreign person, you say, oh, Celtic, it's the strip they talk about. It's iconic. And that certainly stands out for me.
One of the things that's such a big deal about it is the change to the special badge that was made for that season. That's that harks back to Celtic's origins as a club. The Celtic cross that appears on the first strip is then used at this point here 100 years later. How important do you think it is for this to have happened, that they commemorate it with a special badge rather than just...
Well, at the time as a kid, Paul, for me, I sort of got it, but it didn't matter to me. It's when I look back on it now with a sense of pride, like the 125th third kit, with the tenants sort of whited out and all the rest. These wee nice touches, these are the things, or even our third kit right now, harking back to the big shamrock sort of strip and the almost like the foundation badge, charity foundation badge. It's these sort of things now as I'm older, but at the time, it was like, well, I don't get that. And I got the away kit as well, but Mum had to, you could get the Centenary badges, Mum had to sew that on in my away kit at the time, because,
did you?
Yeah, because I didn't get why my badges didn't line up, Paul.
See, this is a donated one from a friend's big brother one night, which I was delighted to have. Actually, when you talk about the badge reappearing, it reappears also in the back of the Seville kit as well, behind the neck. It's a really iconic kit. The shorts as well, green piping down the sides, the badge there, the
wee bar across it as well,
and it's tremendous as well. When you think of Celtic over the years and the numbers in the shorts, and that's where people were identified with the numbers in the shorts. That they do though have one occasion where Celtic are wearing the numbers on the back of the strip, and that's whenever Celtic play against Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah, well, any European game, that was a regulation, so yeah, I remember the game well.
And of course, a visit back to Parkhead from Murdo MacLeod.
Yeah, that's correct.
And it's it's the irony of when a player goes to come back to haunt you, or this is something that you kind of Murdo, who'd been such a great servant, returns to Parkhead and with his new team. Celtic kicking off the 87-88 season in style in the new home kit, and also they're going to revisit the away strip, which is really the kit that had been used previously in the 86-87 season, and is now coming back to have a run out as the away kit for this season with a changed badge.
Yep.
And changes to the sponsor as well in terms of the sizing and the colours that are on it.
Well, I remember seeing the home kit. The first time I saw it, Paul, was a pre-season friendly against Arsenal, and we get absolutely gubbed 5-1.
And Charlie Nicholas played in that game.
Charlie Nicholas played. Owen Archdeacon dropped his kecks to the Celtic end. I can't mind why, but he did. That's one of those memories as a 7-year-old, and I was like, "Ugh, this is crap." 5-1 against Arsenal. See
it in the terms of the away kit and the home kit. They're very different. It's a real change in Umbro's manufacturing style as well, and the away kit is very much of the early 80s. It's tighter,
heavier.
It's heavier.
Yep.
When I play with it at 5-a-side, I'm really sweaty by the end of it. And there's this tactile is the name of the pattern. That this was actually, they put the big diamonds through it to try and stop people from making fakes and making knockoffs. But this also has a change in the badge, which comes out in 88.
88, yeah. We start, the one you've got on, we start against Morton. I think it was at 4-0. Walker scored a couple. We wore that all the way through 87. And then we played Hibs, I think it was in February, and we come now a green sponsor, which is larger, and the Centenary badge, which I think made the top look absolutely cracking.
Do you know, it's funny because at the end of 1988, obviously that's the end of the centenary year, and Celtic stopped using this one, and then comes the one that's called the Space Invader sometimes, which is a real iconic kit, but it's an explosion of Umbro with their new direction of where they're going to be going. I really understand. One of the things also that happens with Umbro is they have a huge influx in America because the shorts become really, really popular, and you get these kids who've never played soccer in their life that are kicking about wearing Umbro football shorts, and a massive hit. the Umbro ended up getting overtaken by Nike and Nike buy into them. But if you ever see some of the kits of the Umbro shorts, I didn't realise this was such a big deal.
Oh, they were holiday shorts for me, Paul.
That's it.
That's, you know, I think anyone of our sort of generation, if they've got some sort of snap or been on holiday, they were wearing
Aye.
two-tone Umbro.
Two-tone Umbros, but obviously these kids have moved from the hills of Malibu. I don't think they've lasted 5 minutes playing on a red ash pitch with these.
No, not a chance. Not a chance. Even worse, a black ash pitch.
The pain, and that's one of the things as well that we're looking at this in the podcast. I'm actually going to come into that in a wee second because we're going to talk a bit about the goalie top from this era.
Yep.
Pat Bonner in the goals, and this is a goalie top that is heavy and it's padded and it's needed for the pitches of Scotland.
Yep.
Freezing cold, Sunday mornings, Saturday mornings, you know, ice, all conditions. You know, this is an iconic kit. On the goalie top, JP, it is a heavy, thick, padded number
Yep.
that is needed for the freezing cold, hard ground conditions of Scotland back in those days. What's your thoughts about the goalie top?
Well, the grey one was the one that was commercially available, so that's what everyone got. The shoulder pads, as you said, the arm pads, and it had the wee number 1 all the way shining through it. The one you wanted was the gold one. That's a beautiful, iconic thing. And I told you a story about how I was one of the few people to get the gold ones.
Lucky man.
Not commercially available. My mum hounded the people in the Celtic shop in Dundas Street, and they eventually got 100 into the shop, and I got one. And as I said, no one was impressed because it's a keeper's kit. No one gives a flying monkeys, but I loved it. I think it's a beautiful kit, but that season, Packy got injured early, and it was Alan McKnight for me. He sort of started the season and ended it. Scottish Cup was Alan McKnight. Start of the season, the 2-2 game at Ibrox was Alan McKnight. I picture him in it more. I don't know why, Paul.
Pat had issues with sciatica. Pat's obviously going to be later on a big important player when it goes to the Euros. But yeah, there's this season it's said to go through 4 keepers on this top, maybe more. There's McKnight, there's Bonner, then the following season you've got Ruff and Andrews as well that all wear the strip.
Did Murdoch wear it?
I'm not too sure. I need to look into that one as well.
Murdoch.
I can check it out. Maybe come back to it on social media later on. We can verify it.
I think Hamish McAlpine might have got a trial game in it as well.
Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
It's interesting how much we associate that with Pat Bonner, but really, Pat didn't figure in it for the full season.
No.
One of the things I would like to kind of bring up here when I was looking into this kit, this type of image of Big Pat, there's also a lot of things that are associated with the Celtic in that season that are kind of memorabilia. And one of the things is the wee sports stars, which are a set of figures. And obviously we've got Big Pat Bonner on the front cover of the sports stars figure. However, the kit that he's got on is a tip I've never seen before, this kind of half and half green, but I thought it looked a belter.
I have seen it before, and I think it's from about 84, 85, Paul.
And they're still packaging it out.
And they're still packaging it out
Continue
as
to do
that. But they've not done that with Paul McStay. They've put him in the right kit, have they not?
Yeah, there's also ones that are available from beforehand.
Right, okay.
Celtic go into a huge season, and what they want to do is try to overtake Rangers, who've had a successful year the year before. This is the change of Celtic into iconic games and iconic matches. And one of these things is that Celtic are at Ibrox, and the incident happens where players are sent off, namely Chris Woods, Frank McAvenny. This is a huge moment in the football. Where do you see association of Celtic being successful in this kit? What games stand out to you? What are the moments that stand out to you of 87-88 season?
Well, my first Old Firm game at Ibrox, my dad stupidly took me to the enclosure, and it was that game, 2-2. Now, I don't know if I can remember it, or whether I've just pieced it together from television, but it's Peter Grant trying to claim that second, that's an own goal, and blessing himself. I went on holiday with my Celtic strip down to St Ives, and we had a wee football tournament in 88 in the summer. As soon as I scored a goal, I was blessing myself, and we got friendly with a family in Liverpool. And the dad said, why is JP doing that? I said, oh, he's following Peter fucking Grant. And because I'm from Chapel Hall originally, Peter Grant lived up the same street as my gran in Gibbs Street. So I sort of had a love-hate thing with Peter. But the victories, it was that, it was the New Year game. And it was definitely the 2-1 at Ibrox in March, with the McStay goal, the Walker goal, Henry Smith, Scottish Cup semi-final. And the Scottish Cup final, I mean, Scottish Cup finals in those days, you couldn't have one unless the sun was beaming down, it was roasting. And that ship shone, that strip shone even, in days like that. But they were just good days. Celtic were a good team. And then the strip matched the team for me.
I'm actually going to put this into the context of the 88 Cup final, and this is interesting because one of the images that I remember vividly as a child is Margaret Thatcher presenting Roy Aitken with the cup.
Yes.
And this is set to the backdrop with the miners' strikes and mass unemployment, Thatcherism in the 1980s. And the SFA have decided in their wisdom to invite Margaret Thatcher up, who is not too far off from unleashing the poll tax plot in Scotland, which is going to imprison a lot of people from working class communities, and people are going to be protesting against it. And you know, she'd previously, the year before, Thatcher had left a party conference in Perth to attend the FA Cup final, and what it looked like was that the SFA decided to try to put the Scottish Cup final on the same pedestal by inviting someone of grand importance. So they invite Prime Minister at the time. You have also an issue here where there is trade unions turning up outside the game. People are brandishing red cards towards Thatcher. People are outwardly booing him. And then you have Mick McCarthy, who we spoke about earlier on, the son of a miner, refusing to shake hands with her when she's presented to players the day before. This is a man who's come from a working class community where miners have been attacked and demonised by the media not too long after the Battle of Orgreave in South Yorkshire. And Mick had come through the ranks at Barnsley. And this is not just an empty gesture, I feel, by McCarthy, but I feel it's like him taking a stand as a representative of his entire community.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And it's kind of tied into that season. What's your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. I think I can remember the protests. I can remember Roy, well, not at the time, obviously. I'm watching it since, wiping his hand and thinking, why are you doing that, Roy? But in terms of Mike Stanton, that's someone who's got principles. That's someone who does remember. And I wish more people had it in Scotland these days and remember what the Tories did to us, rather than vote for them. Mike McCarthy's good in my book.
It's now, later on, when you look at it through different eyes, and different contexts, and you understand just how big a deal it must have been.
Yeah. Well, my uncle worked at Ravenscook. He lost his job. That industry was gone. There was nothing. Ravenscook lay empty for tens and tens of years. There's a lot of housing on it now, but there's still swaths of nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing's replaced it. There's not been enough expenditure. There's not been enough investment in people. And that legacy of what the Tories did, what Thatcher did, what that government did, is still evident in Lanarkshire, especially. Bits of Paisley, everywhere, Ayrshire. It's the legacy of it is still ongoing. It's a current issue still.
Yeah. Do you see this as a spectacular own goal by the SFA at the time, looking back?
Well, I think they had the Duchess of Kent the year after. I think it was the SFA, it was the grandstanding.
Aye.
I don't think they gave a flying monkeys about anyone's thoughts. These were the early prawn sandwich people having their meal with their football game. They wanted to star.
Yeah. Football's definitely going to move in the next few years from being sort of, in some instances, demonised as we move into the 90s and move into the working class communities, and it's going to become much more of the prawn sandwich brigade and multi-millionaire owners and different things that are going to change how football is watched and how it's consumed. But at this point, very much as a definite them and us, divide between the football fans and the authorities. And we're going to take a wee look at that as time goes on as well. Obviously, What's your thoughts in the Scottish Cup final? You remember it well, vividly. Is it one of the real highs as a Celtic fan to have completed a League and Cup double at that point when you, as an 8-year-old as you were at the time, did you take in the magnitude of how big it was back then?
Everyone that you went to games with, whether it was my dad going in the pub and we had to go in the lounge because I was there because it was the only place that would let you in. Everyone you talked to, it was the centenary year. Everyone who was older, who knew about it, realised the importance. Watching the 88 History of Celtic video, you know, it's got the centenary theme. It's going to see the Centenary Cup game against Cruzeiro Belo Horizonte or whoever it was, the 4-2 game. Centenary was sort of imprinted on your mind. Now, whether I understood it at the time as much, but for me, the game that maybe outshines the Scottish Cup final is the 3-0 against Dundee. I think we could have won the league the week earlier against Hearts at Tynecastle because they finished second that league, and we lost 2-1. I think Mark McGee or Walker scored. I think Walker did score, but I think that was in the game earlier at Tynecastle. McGee scored a consolation goal. Lost 2-1. What a place to do it. Parkhead, people round the ash track.
Yeah.
How many were in there, we'll never officially know.
Do you know, whenever you look back on it and you see what happened a year later in Hillsborough, that sort of thing will never happen again in football where fans are just, you're not able to celebratory as it was on that occasion. There's a real feelings of just elation as Celtic do it and they clinch it at home. The fans are singing happy birthday to your Celtic. There's a really good feeling in the air.
And there's a nice touch as well, the game after when we get presented the trophy, which was strangely before the match against Dunfermline, with the Dunfermline fans saying happy birthday Celtic, congratulations, and they were getting relegated that season. There was nice touches like that. What about you though? What's your game?
I remember my cup final day is my first communion on that day, and going back with my uncles and to our house to watch the game, taking my wee red sash type thing off, getting changed and watching the football. My Uncle Jared, my Uncle John, my dad just jumping on top of each other. The goal scored. I got a skateboard that day and I was out the back.
I was going to say, what a day, because it's a lucrative day, isn't it? You get a lot of money and presents and everything else. It was ideal.
I remember everything around it. My Uncle Jim came over from America, my mum's uncle. He was over from America that summer and going to the Celtic shop in Dundas Street and him getting the NTSC video of the 100-year anniversary, the official history, and I was watching the PAL version in the house, and I had the Celtic top, the Centenary kit, the top and the bottoms. I had just a pair of white socks on. My wee girl now has my Centenary year strip. But one of the things that I remember about that year as well was the things like the Will to Win, the book.
Yeah.
As time went on and you were into the 90s, you would fall back in that video so often. Yeah. And in Glasgow, it was just tremendous. I just loved William McIlvenny talk. Celtic had played many games that day. I just loved all. I could burst into that any time. But on the other side, the flip side of that is that as we move in, as highs of the highs of the season of 87, 88, where they were equally matched by a disappointing 88, 89 season. Yeah. The 5-1, 4-1 losses to Rangers at Ibrox and kind of.
There was a 3-1 win.
Yes, of course. But I think, do you feel as though, does that do enough to change?
No. I think the 5-1 and 4-1, I think we got the Mangu. We scored first in those games. I think
that's right,
McAvenny, then Chris Morris.
Yeah.
And 5-1's remembered, obviously, for Ian Andrews.
Yeah. Do you feel his careers can be wrongly judged on that game?
No, not his Celtic career, Paul. I mean, he had a absolutely fine sort of middle of the road career down south with Southampton, Leicester and a few others. Yeah. He did okay, but that mop of hair, that stupid effing face, panini sticker like,
just gone. It's a shame whenever that's what you're associated with that, but at the same time, your time at Celtic, whether you can be a real winner or you can be in a side that's less successful, and she's just happened to be at the tail end of a 5-1 defeat.
Yeah, I think that one he dropped. So that's a lot of the goals weren't his fault. When you look back at them, there was one certainly with the cross he drops, and another questionable bit. It didn't make us lose that day. We were awful. And obviously we had a lot. There was a lot of murmurings. McAvenny wanting away back down to London. Walker was injured quite a lot of that season as well after 30 odd goals the season before. Trying to think of who else. I was playing Lex Bailey more and more for some reason, so I don't know. Big Mick was injured, I can't recall, or Roy. We just didn't have the squad.
Yeah, the 878 team isn't there together that long at the other side. You know, they start to disappear over the next 2 years or so. As Rangers become stronger and stronger with much more investment and everything else that's kind of going on. We have a 7-1 win against St Mirren. I need to apologise to my friend Paul Goody because on the way home in the bus, joining in with other boys he was a St Mirren fan, he was a St Mirren fan in Livingston, and other fans joined in. And
Stevie Chalmers' son scored that game for St Mirren.
Is that right?
Yeah, Paul Chalmers.
Paul Chalmers, yes.
Yep, 7-1, yep. I think Alan Ruff played that game in goals, one of the few he played.
He was, I like Ruffy as a Scotland player, coming to the kind of end of his legendary career at Celtic.
Yeah, absolutely.
But another wearer of the goalie top.
Yep.
Celtic also have two big matches in that year. One against Liverpool in the Dubai Super Cup, played in Dubai. This is where Scottish and English champions are playing against each other, with English clubs having been banned from European competition. And then on the 30th of April, there's a huge watershed moment in football that characterises, I think, and defines a lot of the changes that are going to be made, and it's the Hillsborough disaster.
Yep.
And the national sport of football had already been suffering over the years as a result of fan violence, etc. But this is not about fan violence, but it's a huge mark. I think it's one of the most real watershed moments in world football that is so cataclysmic. And you think of the amount of different things that were happening in the 80s. The things that were going on then to the fans following Hillsborough, where fans were being blamed, and there's this idea of a blame culture that's been created and perpetrated by football and by the media and government, and there's obviously the huge inquest that goes into Hillsborough. I remember Celtic then playing Liverpool weeks after, or 2 weeks after the Hillsborough disaster happened, in the first game back.
Yep.
And the Celtic strip and that kind of friendship that was there at the time with the Liverpool side, there's a real sombre moment and everything else. And those, as you talked about earlier on, the fans spilling out the pitch from at Parkhead the year before, whenever this is now a year later, and the happiness and the enjoyment of that is completely gone. For a long time it stopped a lot of people going back to football in general as well, but then it then puts a huge spotlight on fan safety, and it puts a spotlight on many things in football. What do you remember? I remember watching it happening as it appeared on the TV. And
do you mean the initial disaster?
The initial disaster.
I was at my friend Craig's house, and we were playing, and his mum said something. He had a wee brother, Jamie, and his mum said, "Oh, look at this," and 7 minutes past 3, whenever it was, I think it was around that time, and we were playing Hibs in the Scottish Cup semi-final the day after. I think Rangers were playing St Johnstone, the other semi, on that day. So I remember seeing it. I couldn't believe it that people, even then, could go to football and not come back. But in terms of the game, and when we did play Liverpool, we played the day before, and I think we won 1-0, Mark McGee. And just stupid childhood memories that I didn't realise the importance of being there at that game. We were sitting in the main stand then, me and my dad. Didn't realise that you could sort of feel it, but in no way did I realise the importance. What actually peed me off a bit was the fact that we lost 4-0. I know it doesn't matter now, it never mattered, but as a 9-year-old then, that killed me. I was like, but nobody ever says we played the day before, we were tired. It was nothing to do with football. It's for getting guys back in, getting Liverpool players in front of fans again, playing. These were the real issues, but as a child, blinded in stupidity. But it's something I look back on, and I'm proud that we did it. Something that I'm glad Liverpool appreciate and they do to this day. And it's something that I think Glasgow can be proud of as well. It's something that it should never have taken what happened to learn a lesson like that.
It's a sombering and a sobering thought and a sobering moment as well. I always remember seeing a painting. It was a wee boy in a Celtic kit and the 88 kit, and a wee boy in a Liverpool strut having a minute's silence as the two of them stand next to a ball. It's a wee paint, just two wee boys and a football, and I think it hangs up at Parkhead somewhere. Maybe somebody can point me to it, but I always just remember how when I looked at that as a man and see back, I see, you know, that could have been us as a child. That was the kind of the way it is, the impact it kind of has on you. This will take a gargantuan effort to rebuild football, rebuild the trust that exists between the authorities, between fans, and it goes right through for a number of years and I don't think, even though it's been resolved, it'll never be resolved in people's hearts really. But it's one of those things that people move on from and have to build up and have to take for themselves to bring themselves into our acceptance of where we are now is really characterised by what's happened then. And it's so sad. Back to Celtic at this point in this time. Celtic have the opportunity for silverware in the 89 Cup final, where we are facing Rangers.
Yep.
And it's a Joe Miller goal.
Yep.
It is the solitary goal of that day. What's your memories and your thoughts on that?
Well, I was at the game. My dad asked me, "Do you want to go to the toilet, John Paul?" I was like, "No, I don't need it. No, I don't need it. Dad, I need to go to the toilet." We were on the North Terrace and just right near to the split segregation with the Rangers fans. So it was a pain in the arse getting out of that and trying to get back in. Dad takes me to the toilet, we score. He's in the mid all day.
What are you doing, Dad?
I know. But then again, the thing, watching it back and the videos and that, there's a wee bit where Joe Miller scores, and when he's blowing the kisses, there's a mustachioed policeman who turns around, gives the biggest cheeser out, and you're like, go on, my son.
Yeah. I remember trying to sort of Joe Miller, when he's celebrating, he gets pulled down, doesn't he? He's running.
He gets pulled down, and they obviously go on about that throw-in, but throw-in's in our bloody half almost.
Aye, I feel
lob the ball up, header, we win a header. All Gary Stevens needs to do is pass it back to his keeper.
It ends at 89 with this last appearance of the kit on the pitch, and Celtic happy. I remember getting Shoot magazine and Joe Miller's in the front cover, and having seen Joe Miller speak about it, he's tremendous. When he talks about his memories of that day as well. But this is we associate this kit with an association of success at Parkhead that will not be seen. And it's I feel it's a wee bit bittersweet this time, because we'll never see that success again. And when you look back for the next 6 years or so, it's memories of that 89 and 88. Is this team, the 87-88 team, the 88-89 team, particularly the double winning side, are they comparable to the Lions? Are they comparable to the Seville team? Where do you think they fit in the echelons of Celtic history?
For the importance of the year, in terms of knowingly going into a year, because obviously we didn't know what was going to happen in 67, then I would say it's up there. What I think would surpass it is obviously we're going in knowingly this year, hopefully to 10. Whether that happens or not, it's a different story. But in terms of knowingly trying to achieve something during the most important years of seasons in your existence, then yeah. But you could argue that in 38, we won the Empire Exhibition, Scottish Cup as well. That's 50 years. You could say in 67, well, we take 6th of November 87 when we first met, formed the club. That's 80 years. There's something about Celtic, and whether it's 38, whether it's 88, whether it's 125th in 2012, beating Barca, last 16 again, winning the league. There's something about us in dates that make it more romantic. And as Billy McNeil says in that that video we hark back to, that there is a fairy tale about the club. There is something about the sort of Cinderella who's trodden on and, you know, comes good in the end. And although, you know, it kills us at the time when we watch it, I don't think we'd have it any other way, you know, for that moment of passion and success. So, yeah, I would say, I mean, they're not the Lions. They're not as good as the team from Seville, not as good as the Invincible team. But, yeah, they had a lot of pressure on. And especially when we went out in the Skull Cup against Aberdeen up at Pittodrie, then these guys had to step up, and they did. And they had great leaders.
It's interesting you talk about the Cinderella aspect of it all. This is really almost like a metaphor for 100 years, you know, of the Irish diaspora in Scotland and in Britain as well. And Celtic is this kind of beacon of success at this point. Raised or created to feed the poor. They then go on to win the European Cup. They then win the League and Cup double in their 100-year anniversary. Certainly a huge amount of pride that the people from who, you know, beforehand would have not had a lot of things to really be proud of their Irish heritage and Irish roots, etc. But now we're into a second and third generation of the Irish are living in Scotland at around 89 season. And I think it kind of, the Celtic kit that we start to see, not just at Parkhead, but you start to see it elsewhere as well. I turn up in football pitches or in football games, a wee Celtic top in the crowd, or I see it quite a lot in the Pogues concerts from that time. Whenever you talk about adults not really wearing kits, you start to see them wee pockets of a guy with a leather jacket and a Celtic top.
Well, you watch Match of the Day from that era, Arsenal, Man United. You could see 10, 20, Liverpool as well, Celtic tops. So it's the Irish moving over there. And I think it was probably the height of Celtic in terms of Irish fans spreading the word. Because a lot these days, and it's easier to do, you know, are taken over by the romance of the English Premiership and money. But going back to, I mean, Glasgow in the 1880s for Catholics and pre that was very much about, you know, Ireland still part of the UK then. And the fight was on in terms of home rule halls, Irish home rule, and the likes of John Glass, who were very big in that movement, having the links to Michael Davitt to open the second Celtic Park. These were guys still fighting. The sort of second generation were getting more comfortable. And the time they got maybe third, fourth, the Centenary year, then we knew our place. We were confident people. We could express ourselves. And I think that sort of comes together with the strip as well. And it was a badge of honour. It wasn't something you wore maybe a generation back and it was seen as an aggression, something to say, well, fuck you, sort of to the rest of Scotland. It was something to be proud in. It was something to take forward.
I think, like, when you talk about these different parts and you bring it together and you see somebody that's in London, for instance, that's wearing the Celtic strip, it's out with Glasgow, and you think how the Irish were sort of recognised in London at this point in time, the different issues that were going on in the news and media, and then you look at it and people wearing it to a football match that's not a Celtic game, and you this idea of a badge of honour, which you're right, and it's almost like people are proud of who they are and are unashamedly willing to be part of society and be accepted for who they are. This is also a time where, you know, 100 years, and JP, you had a lot of work to do with the Celtic graves as well over that time. And how important in this era was it for Celtic to commemorate that 100-year anniversary?
Oh yeah, it's vitally important. I mean, my speciality was in the original Celtic Park and the hall we were formed. But for me, it's something to go back to your roots, because people say, well, we shouldn't have this Irish connection anymore. Well, we bloody should, because it was where we came from. Doesn't mean we can't encompass everyone else, you know, and get them involved, but it is harking back to our roots. It's harking back to, you know, a Maris brother from Ireland. It's harking back to John Glass from Ireland. Other people like John McLaughlin, and the rest, all the Irish roots, these are people who had to, they just didn't grow up and were Irish like today, or, you know, maybe second, third generation. These were people who were Irish and had a target on their back. These were people who fought for everything. When clubs were getting formed and going down the Swanee, within years, there was other clubs like Glasgow Hibs, Glasgow Hibernians, which was a split off from Glasgow Celtic, the content and the malcontenters, in terms of they wanted the signing policy like another club had later on in the day, and Hibs had originally. Clubs came and died. To get 3 parishes together, to see there was a community, thank God, yeah, you celebrate it. You never be ashamed of it. You never let a PLC or shareholders or anything make you ashamed of where you come from. So, definitely.
Talking about the way in which the Irish identity was seen over here, in Ireland, in 1988, the Euros are there. Well, the Euros, the team go for the Euros, not in Ireland. It wasn't the Euros that they forgot about. But you've Pat Bonner, you get Chris Morris, you get McCarthy. How important are those players, or how important is that Irish team in establishing popularity in football or soccer in Ireland?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, football in Ireland was always big, but I don't think it really took off until maybe the early 80s, you know, with Brady, Lawrence and the likes, you know, world-class footballers, because there was always rugby, there was always the Irish games. You know, for me, it sort of took over, and for me, I'm an Irish passport holder because my grandfather was born in Roscommon, which no one else comes from. No one else in Ireland has ever been to Roscommon. I don't know I do know it exists because I've been there. But for me, that Ireland team was an extension of Celtic. When you look at the crowd in Germany, West Germany, then it was full of Celtic strips in the crowd. I just think, you know, Ireland was a very different place before the Good Friday Agreement. You know, they still had their claim in Northern Ireland, which they eventually put aside. I can't remember the article what it was called. But, you know, it still was a fight. It was a very different place from now on.
Yeah. Do you think nowadays when you have kids take a team and it's almost always a Manchester United or an Arsenal, obviously Liam Brady's a huge influence in Pat Jennings in terms of support there, but how big a deal do you think it is now, all this time later on? Are Celtic fans from that era, from that generation, that you have a lot who they've hooked on in the 87-88 season and really latched onto it, and they're, as time goes on now, the ones that also will come over. It's a different game, isn't it, altogether, from the popularity of English teams then?
Yeah, I think in Ireland we're more everyone's second team now rather than... There's still areas where we are people's first team, especially in the north and the 6 counties. And certain areas, I get guys in group chats, lots of guys who Celtic are their only team, and good on them. But a few stories that some people, you know, get the door opened, they're wearing Celtic tops, and it's immediately, oh, you're a shinner, as if it's some sort of badge of dishonour. But that's only anecdotal evidence. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think that then the 87-88 kit, where do you see it ranking in terms of other kits of that time?
Oh, I don't think there's anything that comes close, Paul. I mean, I think a couple of years before I'd had Celtic kits, and I also had a West Brom kit with a no smoking sign on it. And I sort of remember them, and I can remember the Aberdeen kit that were bigger squares. The Rangers kit was similar, but it was square rather than diamond. No, for me, no, you can't beat it. The Arsenal kit, Man United kit, Liverpool kit was a nice kit with the Adidas. The Man U kit was nice. The Arsenal kit was okay. But no, nothing comes close to it for me.
Who's when you think of that strip, when you think of Hampden in the Sun and you think of league wins, who's the player that is in your head wearing that kit right now?
The greatest ever Celtic, Roy Aitken.
Roy Aitken.
My nom de plume on Celtic Wiki when I do my articles, on the Huddle board, on other various boards, it's Roy Aitken. Basically, because my dad was a fireman, came up with the idea of those yellow plastic helmet charity things, and Roy Aitken came with his daughter to open it, and this is during the Centenary year, and his daughter was called Ashley. I was like, I'm in love. My crush is an 8.
Roy Aitken?
Well, him as well. So he became my greatest ever Celtic, and that's from someone who's got John Clark as a family member who won the European Cup. He doesn't even make the top 10. Timo Weir's second.
It's a real... mine is Paul McStay. When I think of this one, I think Paul McStay running, his hands outstretched. But it's a real special strip for a special time. However, has an association with a success that Celtic would not see for some time after. And the Hampden Sun is overshadowed for a time with the clouds of failure for the next 6 years or so. And it seems as if the strip has shrunk to fit inferior players. It's very bittersweet, and it's the last chapter of great Celtic teams, comparable, I think, to any team that had come before. I think that you're right in the points you said. Celtic has a hugely cultural significance that had to be celebrated. And the idea of a team being created to feed the poor and hungry, the diversity that's come through, the adversity faced over the years, and it gives us a tremendous sense of pride in Celtic as a result. The idea of changing the shamrock to the Celtic cross for those 2 seasons pulls us back to our early charitable roots as well, and also the representative that Celtic is of the Irish in Scotland and in Britain, and for the reasons that the club was formed. A journey, definitely, GP, that changed the status quo of Scotland, I think, for the better, made it a much more multicultural and diverse country. Any last points on the kit? Any last thoughts to say for Celtic in this strip, or this strip, how it appeals to you?
Just in terms of the general sort of era, there was also the production Celtic, the Wildcats, done by the Wildcats, the Celtic history. I think it was in the Pavilion. Wait to see that. That was bloody brilliant.
Ian Anderson?
Yeah, Ian Anderson, my City Lights guy. I was trying to, couldn't mind his name. Also, my trainers, where we went to Blackpool on holiday, and they were black trainers with the Celtic cross and badge stitched in. They were also my school shoes. I had about 2 or 3 pairs of them. Joe Miller, Billy Stark, Tommy Burns, Tony Shepherd, Owen Archdeacon, Lex Bailey, Anton Rogan. Just every one of them's just like a hero. Just somebody, even Walker for a spell, Mark McGee, Maka. I mean, just great times. I feel like Jimmy Delaney almost created saying best Celtic team ever I played in.
Best team ever played in.
I never played for them, but that's how I feel about them.
It's how the way kits conjure up these emotions, and that's what I want this podcast to be about. Not just about the historical aspect of it, but the emotions that football strips pull in, the way they make you feel, the things they brought back to you, and also the wider context of football kits too. Over the next few months, we're going to have looking at things such as Sabutio. We're going to look at kits from Italy. We're going to look at teams that have played in different top flights in Europe. We've got a Football Manager. There's so many different aspects we want to touch on as part of this, but this has really been the end, I suppose, of this first episode, this first pod, and it's been a real pleasure chatting to you, GP, a really knowledgeable guy on all aspects Celtic, because they seem to be so vividly put into the forefront of your mind, and it's been tremendous speaking to you, and I really thank you for coming on to the show. This has been the State of Mind. A State of Mind sells the jerseys. If you know the Kitstory, the story of the 1987-88 Celtic Centenary top, my name's Paul Sheridan. The story so far, the story continues. There we go.
Is this a bit of history?
It is.
With a shot, and it's there!
And he's got a good